On this episode of Industry Relations, Rob and I talk about MLS books, carrier pigeons, and AI. Let's go. This is Industry Relations, a podcast at the intersection of real estate and technology from an insider's perspective with Rob Hahn and Greg Robertson.
This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Cotality. CoreLogic is now Cotality. Same trusted technology and data, just a new name that reflects the mission to unify property professionals, strengthen industry relationships, and drive innovation globally. Cotality powers tools you already know and love, like Matrix, the gold standard for MLS systems. There's One Home for agents who want to give their clients a more personalized collaboration experience. MLS Touch keeps you connected to the MLS no matter where you are. Realist gives you the insights to stand out as a local expert and tools to fill your funnel with high-value leads. The new One Homeowner platform keeps you top of mind and delivers value long after the deal is done. Learn more at Cotality.com. And if your MLS is powered by Cotality, don't miss Camp Cotality for MLS staff and leadership this June. It's a perfect place to connect, learn, and see what's next. My thanks to Cotality for sponsoring Industry Relations.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Industry Relations with Rob and Greg. This is your host, the notorious Rob, and as always, my co-host, the fabulous Greg Robertson.
Whoa. So hey, I've always had three things I have. So just as you announced that, is it the notorious ROB or is it just the notorious Rob? I think I've heard it both ways, and I think I've heard it both ways from you.
Yeah, I answer to both.
You answered to both. Okay. What do you prefer?
I don't know. That's a good question. If they're referring to the blog, then I guess ROB.
Okay.
If they're referring to me, then Rob, I guess.
Okay. All right. So the notorious Rob.
I don't think I'm notorious though. You know.
Oh yeah, I think it's a good moniker.
You think? I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
I'm like super like optimistic and white pilled about everything. You know, I'm not that famous.
I would say I'm like a X list celebrity. You're like more of a D list celebrity, right? So
I don't know, man. I think far more people know you and recognize you. I mean, you know, I go to conferences, I just hang around you, and I get to meet everybody.
Oh no, yeah. Listen, you get enough. You get your own groupies. I see that all the time. So, two other things. So I had the most incredible experience like 2 days ago.
Okay.
On our GiantStepsAdvisors.com website, we have like an office hours with Greg and Dan, right?
Okay.
And that's where we invite, it could be a new vendor, a startup, or anything that wants to talk about anything. And it's actually Dan's idea.
Yeah.
We click a link and we'll, set up a time and we'll talk. So our first one was this week, and the gentleman's name was Jacob Silvermitz, if I'm pronouncing that right. Sorry about that, Jacob. Okay. And he had an idea. I'm not gonna steal his thunder, but he had an idea for a product. But the interesting thing is that he had found us via, or Dan and I, but he found us because he ran into our podcast, right? Industry Relations, right?
All right.
So he started listening to us, and he thought, okay, these guys are like, they talk real, and they're like really, there's no, as we are, have no filter
Zero.
of anything, right? And he just really appreciated that. And then through that, he found my website, and then he found the Greg and Dan, whatever. And he learned about Dan and all that. Here's the interesting part. He lives in Tel Aviv, Israel, and he buys and sells houses in Ohio.
Oh, wow.
And is a very successful agent, broker in Ohio. And I'm just like, the fucking internet, man. I mean, it's just crazy. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So it was a great conversation. I think we probably talked for about 45 minutes, and it was just amazing to me to have, he'd originally grown up in the U.S.
Sure.
And then went to Israel on a some sort of trip that,
right.
probably through his synagogue, and then ended up staying there.
Right.
But just an incredible story, an incredible I just love founders like that. They're kind of scratching their own
Is his
itch.
product related to kind of the fact that he's able to do brokerage from Israel?
It's a real estate. It's made for real estate brokers and agents. Yes.
But is it like this sort of, that's what I mean, telepresence type product?
No, it's not a telepresence type product.
Right.
No, it's just a more productivity tool.
Okay, got it.
Okay, third thing.
Yes.
So my son, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, has started a new business as part of. He's in Cybax, which is if you guys remember the junior achievement back in the day, where you start your own company in a high school, it's a little bit more intense than that.
Okay.
But he's a senior, so his senior project is to start a company.
Okay.
And he started a company, and he calls it Cycle Century Stickers.
Okay.
And, here in Huntington Beach, I'm sure it's the same in Vegas and other places, but everybody's got these damn e-bikes.
Well,
right?
Huntington Beach, not Vegas. It's too. It gets too hot here.
It gets
for
too
any
hot
of that
there,
shit.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But, and, he's trying to make them safer, so he created these kind of stickers that are just this high-vis yellow sticker that you can stick on any bike.
Okay.
It just increases the visibility. Plus, there's like a little card in here that tells you kind of some stats and stuff. And if you go to Cycle, and I'll put this in the show notes, cyclecenturystickers.com, you can order a 3-pack of stickers.
Yeah.
Part of the proceeds will go to a organization that helps out with bicycle safety or just that. And he's got the little design. He's got a website up. You can go there and put a credit card in and order it. And we're actually right now trying to partner with the HB Police Department. He's going to be at a street fair on Tuesday, kind of promoting these things.
Great.
So Toby Robertson, cyclecenturystickers.com.
Fantastic.
Order it up. I'll put it in the show notes.
Fantastic. I love that. And he's a senior in high school.
Yeah.
So he's not allowed to own anything right now.
You mean own what?
He's not 18, right?
He's 18. He's
18. Okay,
Yeah,
so he's
he's got
okay.
Him and his brother. Now here's the other thing.
Yeah.
His brother Cole, who was also in the same program,
Right.
he won the big prize, the senior prize. The big.
wow.
He got a little scholarship money.
All right.
So his of course there's a little bit of rivalry here. So I don't know if he's going to do that. But,
So, I mean, Cole's our producer.
Yes.
I think we need to maybe talk to him about what business he will be starting.
Yeah. Well, he wrote a book. He wrote a book. Basically, it was a Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know if you call it a one shot or
Like an adventure module?
adventure
or?
module. Yeah.
Okay.
And he wrote it. He had his friends and his sister do the artwork on it. And
Wow.
he's got his website. You can go to his website, sunboundstudios.com, and I think you can order it still.
Right.
We got a couple of entrepreneurs under the belt here. So
Fantastic. If Cole weren't, technologically, he's not really in front of a we should be bringing him on to talk about this Dungeons and Dragons thing, because I'm alternatively both fascinated that the young kids are playing Dungeons and Dragons still.
it's not even young kids. I mean, it's a big Hollywood thing now. I mean, it's huge. Oh no, I'll put there's some things in the show notes here. Check out Critical Role, man. Those guys
I know
are
Critical.
bank.
I've watched, but they're not. I mean, let's
not
put it
kids.
this way.
Well, for us, maybe they're kids. Yeah, but I mean, they're 20s and 30s. Shit.
My point is, as one of the original Dungeons, I own the box, dude. That's the thing. People don't fucking remember. I was in Dungeons and Dragons before there was advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay. All right.
Right. So that's what, late 70s, the fact that the young kids are still playing Dungeons and Dragons is fascinating to me. I'm saying it's a good thing, right? But the other interesting thing about that for me is maybe that points to, the next generation maybe wanting to go back to kind of the more physical, more real, more human thing.
Oh yeah, interaction. Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
as opposed to just video games, right?
He's had all these things in our
awesome.
garage with a bunch of his friends and stuff, and now he does the Magic the Gathering, and then he does the what are the I forget he's on this.
He's gonna do
listening.
Warhammer. Is he in
Warhammer, yeah, Warhammer he loves.
Okay, that's super nerdy.
And he's he paints the things.
Yeah, the
and
figurines. That's a
thing.
big part of Warhammer.
Yeah. So believe
I
me,
never
he's
got into Warhammer
Screwed up my
because
garage, big time.
Warhammer is so time consuming. Holy shit! You got to paint all those figurines and you got to do all this shit. And I don't understand the
he's
rules.
actually 3D printed a bunch of that stuff too. So
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's talk about real estate.
That's fantastic, man. And that maybe, it's interesting because I think that maybe does kind of play into what we decided we want to talk about today. Because look, we could keep talking about CCP and, all the shenanigans in the industry, but until something happens, right, until something new pops, I just don't, like, I don't know. I don't want to keep beating the same dead horse, right? But if you still want us to talk, like, want to hear us talk about that shit, let us know. But right now, until something new changes, I feel like we've kind of explored every angle, pretty much all the angles there is to explore.
There'll be more angles, trust me.
I'm sure, Like when Zillow finally publishes what its rules are, maybe, we'll pick it up again.
God,
or
that again. Okay.
something, I mean, obviously we could, you wanted to at least touch on the fact that the printed books are back.
Yeah. So if anybody didn't, I'll put this in the show notes, but Compass announced that they're now printing a book, a physical book that you can, that people can go into a Compass office, which I'm wondering if people are actually going to Compass offices, realtors especially, and I guess they're going to have some chamber or a room with a light that shines on the book that you can sit down and like. I just picture this in my head. I did this thing on AI. I'm like, I had a picture of Robert Refkin, and I'm like, make this guy look like a bouncer in front of a velvet rope, in front of a club named Holmes, looking at the crowd, the line skeptically, right? It's on my blog. It's brilliant, right? But no, and he'll allow other brokers and agents coming in, right? So
Sure.
Let me walk you to the room. I can imagine like there's two people garbed in a long white robe, and they walk you to the chamber in which the book is then in there. They open the doors, and I hear maybe angels sing and lots of birds chirping, and then you're allowed to sit down, and then they give you white gloves, I think, and you put the white gloves on, and you can move each page of the book and look at the things.
But it's kind of the like the Dungeons and Dragons thing. What's old is new again.
Yeah, no. And next thing, I mean, what's next? I mean, listing alerts via carrier pigeon, I think, is the next thing.
I don't think so, because I don't think we've ever had listing alerts via carrier pigeon. It's just what's old is new.
Well, you might as well go way back. I'm sure at one point some guy in a castle got a carrier pigeon and says, "Hey, this castle over here is for sale."
Actually, it's funny. I've always wondered about that. There was a part of me that always thought it would be fun to write like a medieval fantasy book.
Oh wow, you can do that for sure.
No, but from like a real estate agent, like a real estate broker.
Ye old real estate agent back in the day.
Because
right?
it's like you think about like Game of Thrones, right? You have Winterfell, right? You have this village. Okay, but like, who brokered Winterfell?
Yeah, I don't know if back then it's like you didn't pay cash; you basically paid with armies.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the castle, fine. But there are shops. And,
sure, yeah.
I've always thought like King's Landing Brokerage, King's Landing Realty would be.
This is a great
series.
shop. It's right in line with the road right to the King's, right up to the castle. So it's a great location for you.
Right, or this location would be perfect for a smithy. But I just always thought it would be funny, or explore that, like, because you do wonder how did medieval times, people buy and sell real estate. Now, there was a TV show, I don't know if you remember, called Deadwood.
Yeah,
it was on HBO.
I never watched it, but I heard about it, yeah.
It was a really great show. But there's one little scene, like right at the beginning of it, basically the main characters, ride into town, and they want to set up a business, right? So they go to the bartender, the saloon owner, who's one of the main figures, right? And the saloon owner is like, I know what lots are for sale, right? Do you know what I mean? Like, he was almost like the real estate broker because he knew the whole town, knew people, and they would be like, yeah, I'm going to sell whatever this lot.
Okay, let's keep this thread going. Let's think of real estate agents in film. Okay, so I'm going to give you the next one. You're after this, all right? There Will Be Blood. If you remember, Daniel Day-Lewis's character was looking to buy some lots of property for all his oil wells, right? So, so There Will Be Blood. You go next.
Wait, but who was the agent, though?
I don't know what his name was. It was a character in the movie, but I couldn't name the agent. Yeah.
Okay. God, real estate agents in movies. I mean, Santa Clarita Diet, I guess.
Okay, there's that. Because
I've used that in a presentation.
Right. Okay, how about this one? American Beauty. Kevin
That's a famous
Spacey, but
one.
his wife was. Remember, she's like,
Yes.
was cheating on the side with the king of real estate.
With the
You're
king
the
of real
king.
estate.
You're the
Right.
king. You're
Yeah,
who's the king? You're the
Yeah.
king.
Yeah. Definitely remember that.
Okay, next, go.
I don't. That's a good question. Obviously, there's is it Modern Family?
Modern Family. Okay, good.
Right.
God, now
Because
I thought you were
NAR
gonna
used them as a realtor.com.
yeah,
used
Phil,
them.
whatever his name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, God, I thought you're gonna fumble there. Let me think here. Real estate
I'm out.
agents.
I'm done now. I'm out.
American Psycho. There was a real
Oh,
estate
yeah,
agent
yeah,
that had to kind of sell the apartment after he
yeah.
killed all the people in there.
Yeah. I mean, Big at the same thing.
Big.
Tom Hanks movie, right?
Yeah.
Where he's a child, he becomes grown up,
Okay,
and
he
then-
bought a thing. Okay,
Right.
yeah,
and there was a
okay,
real estate
okay.
agent. Look,
then
real estate agents are in TV and movies all the time.
Yeah, but I'm trying to maybe. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, that's good enough, I think.
Right. But in any event, the point is the printed books are back, right? Because now here's the thing: what do you think? There's this presages anything? Is this a trend?
No, Jesus. Remember when Compass was gonna reinvent the yard sign?
Get Compass out your mind. Everyone
Well,
has
no,
this
but I mean,
Compass
again, this is
problem.
they were gonna reinvent. I'll give two examples.
Okay.
Compass was going to reinvent the yard sign, and they came up with this. I made a joke about it in Industry Relations one because it was lighted, and my joke was everybody's wondering how, and then everybody hated it because it was lighted, right? So the neighbors complained.
Right.
So I haven't seen one ever, but my joke was everybody's wondering how where does the light come from? And this is after they just got their $4 million from SoftBank, and I'm like, and then I showed a picture, and of opening up the back of the sign, and they were just lighting money on fire, and that's where the light came on. Right.
Yeah. Cute.
Then, and I'll give you another example of things trying to come back. There was a show I went to it was back when they were called Realogy, and it was Century 21, and they had a fashion show, and they're going to bring back the Century 21 jacket,
Yes.
right? So, this kind of retro thing. You see it comes around there. Now, here would be the interesting part. A lot of people probably don't know this, but ERA, electronic real estate, they got their start because they promoted that we had a fax machine
Yes.
in every office. And that was like, holy shit.
That's right.
Those things are expensive, and you have a dedicated line or whatever. And that was their whole thing. Maybe ERA takes a page from this, and they go retro, and they go, we'll go back to fax, baby.
Is that retro enough? I don't know. So I think one of the things I'm getting to is it's this weird thing where on the one hand, technology is going so fast, right? Like we haven't really talked about AI, for example, in real estate, right? Part of it is because I'm not an expert and I'm not that interested. That's part of it, right? But the other part of it is this weird trend. Like I said, kids are playing Dungeons and Dragons again. They're playing Magic the Gathering, right? There is something happening in our culture, in our society, where things are kind of trying to go retro. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
bottom jeans.
I don't know how to. I can't put my finger on it.
Is it a nostalgia thing? I mean, you talked about we were gonna in the pre-show here. We were talking about when was the height of civilization? You were saying like the mid to late 90s, right?
I think
Before
from
social media.
from 1995 to 2005 was the height of human civilization.
Yeah.
And I think
and downhill from there, huh?
pretty much. But really, I've actually had a conversation with a friend about this recently. I actually point to the GFC as the moment when everything started collapsing.
Oh wow, okay. Yeah.
Because 2008, 2009, right?
Yeah.
We had the
Credit
huge
default
crisis,
swaps. Yeah.
right? And then ever since then, I feel like the world has been shit, right? And like across the board, right? In a weird way that I can't put my finger on.
Yeah, I think to me it's probably, more fundamentally than that, the pandemic just fucked everything up.
Well, pandemic, but it wasn't. So I guess what I'm getting at though is it's weird if you think about the 2010s, right?
Right. Okay.
So as we're just coming out of, or still kind of in the whole GFC thing, right? Through 2020 when the COVID hoax happened to us, like it wasn't like the 2010s were awesome.
Yeah, but I mean, to me, I always think of those as like that was like the beginning of like what they were calling Web 3.0, or just different. We have the internet here, and then the iPhone came in 2006, and like, okay, now we kind of everybody's getting broadband, and it's, as far as me being in tech a lot, I thought those times were incredible.
The 2010s?
Yeah.
What was so incredible about the 2010s?
What I just said. I mean, the rise of kind of like, broadband and the internet, and the mobile. iPhone was released in 2006, I think. Right.
Okay, but
so
what's
a lot
that's
of
my
a lot
point.
of
What's
great
so awesome?
a lot of great technology and technological improvements.
I know, but I think that's my point, Greg. Is like, I thought we would have flying cars by now.
Yeah, that's what everybody says.
Right?
Elon talks about that. It's like,
I thought we'd have
the flying cars things. It's like they're too noisy. Nobody wants a flying car because they're too noisy.
Or fine, like I thought we'd have robot maids like in the Jetsons, right? So we had. Yeah. No, you're right. We've had all this great technology, right? What have we used all this great technology for?
Well, no. The famous quote is, I think it was Peter Thiel. It's like, instead of flying cars, we got 40 characters, right?
Yeah, something like that. That's something I've always kind of had an issue with. It was okay. You're right. Like broadband, 4G, 5G, like fucking, like this thing here is more powerful than the NASA computer that powered space flight. All kinds of stuff.
Yeah, exponentially.
Right. And what have we used all of it for? Like TikTok videos, OnlyFans,
and nudes.
And like all kinds of shit that I'm like, but is this cool? Like, this isn't good,
No,
every single person has the ability to probably make Hollywood quality movies with this thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And yet I turn on Netflix and there's like nothing to watch. Nothing I'm interested in.
Right.
The only thing I think I've actually watched seriously on Netflix in the last like year that I thought was really good are all international.
Oh yeah, okay.
Right, like a bunch of like Korean shows. Yeah. There was this German series or Austrian series we just finished watching called The Empress. Right, Downton Abbey is from UK. Like all international. It's So I'm like, so that's kind of what I mean, right? I'm not disagreeing with you. Like,
I mean, I would say you're a pretty narrow demographic, Rob. Just knowing you a little bit.
True, but I don't think if you went and asked people who are like really into TikTok, they sit there and go, "Oh yeah, TikTok has been this amazing improvement for my life."
Oh God, no! I mean, it's
you know what I mean?
Screen time. Yeah, and it is sad. You see, our mutual friend Russell Smith, right? He gets I don't know how he is. Maybe it's his grandfather or something, but he goes to Masters every year, right? And famously, the Masters, you can't bring a cell phone on that thing. You got to check him in at the gate, right? So this is incredible experience. He said he was talking to. I'll tell two stories about him, and then maybe I'll put this picture. You put it in the show notes of him in the crowd. But he gets in there and you're doing around, and everybody's just talking to each other.
Right.
Right. When they're watching people play, it's not like they don't have their phones in front of them.
Right.
They're watching fucking history being made right there.
Right.
When you look at that famous shot now of Rory, on his knees, head down, just basically, so emotional. And you look at the crowd, everybody's excited. And you see Russell, he's got a thing, he's in that picture if you zoom in.
Right.
And there's not a cell phone out there. It's just everybody experiencing that in the same moment as a human being. He said he also sat down, and next to him is the basketball girl, Caitlin. Yeah,
I don't know.
Some famous basketball player, and they just had a conversation there for 30 minutes.
Right.
Because, I'm sure she felt more comfortable with no phones around either.
Right.
So it doesn't end up, some, crazy, modified picture there that says that she's a member of MS-13, right? I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, it just, I don't know if that, and then you notice people nowadays, it's just they're in that doom scroll. It's like they're just locked in, and they're just do,
right.
And and I try not to do that myself. I mean, trying to read more books this year,
but there's something going on, is all I'm getting at, right? So yeah, look, it's really easy to make fun of Compass, right? And I get it. Oh yeah, printed books like that. That's the way,
Mm-hmm.
But and again, I'm not in favor of the printed book.
I think carrier pigeons would be a better idea.
Like I'm not so a fan of it. At the same time, there is a part of that's kind of like, is there something going on? Is there a backlash of some kind? You know, are people just so sick and tired? Again, not necessarily with real estate, just in life in general, with so much tech, with so much, you know, so much this, right? Where they're now starting to be like, you know what? I actually want to go, you know, Thursday night to this fucking strip mall, right? And go to this comic book store and sit there with a whole bunch of smelly, sweaty, you know, nerds, you know, rolling dice. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right.
And again,
I've heard roll dice at the Wynn, but I mean that's me.
Right, that's very different. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. There's something going on. Like, you know, there's reports out there about Gen Z apparently, and even younger, like the older alphas, are like flocking to the Catholic Church.
Yeah, well, it's not happening. I
like
know of.
Catholic Church specifically, right? Because what they're looking for is sort of that traditionalism. Right, they don't want the rock band church anymore. Like that was the big thing when.
Like
when we were coming
Harvest
up, right?
Crusade or some shit.
I think Southern California is home to one of the biggest ones out there. You know, one of these mega churches, right?
I couldn't tell you.
They don't want that anymore. They want like the old traditional, classic, like cathedrals and stained glass windows.
Latin.
And what?
No, it's Latin.
Dude, Latin Mass is getting really popular.
It's so random, dude. I cannot believe that.
But what I'm saying is maybe it's not random, right? Maybe it's because technology has advanced so much, we feel so disconnected.
Right.
Right. I mean, work from home. Like, I work from home, you know. I don't know if you do or not. Like, there's so much of this that people just feel completely disconnected. And look, again, from a efficiency, ease, right, all of that, there's no doubt. Like, this, you know, like, technology, the fact that we're able to record this basically virtually, right?
Yeah.
Where you and I do not have to be in a physical studio to do this. Like, it's all amazing. It's all wonderful. I'm not knocking any of it, right? All I'm saying is there's something going on, right? And maybe it's filtering into real estate.
Yeah, no, but yeah, I get your point. Yeah.
Right. Okay, I'm not saying let's be clear. I'm not saying Robert Refkin's out there saying, you know, I want to go back to the traditional. Like,
I want a Calvinist society where we all.
That's not what I'm saying at all. I think on record, he's doing what he's doing because it's going to be beneficial for Compass. Like, great, but there's something kind of going on, right? Is all I'm getting at. To where someone in his company at Compass, somebody, because it's not just Robert Refkin. Somebody in marketing, somebody in brokerage operations said, you know what? We should go back to the book. Right.
Yeah, man. I mean, that person, to say yes on that, somebody's either got to be fired or...
But it does. So here's kind of the interesting thing about that then, right? Again, considering that we are on the verge of AI taking over. Right, everyone talks about it. AI is going to take over. AI is going to take over. Okay, we're on the verge, right? Maybe it's not next year. Maybe it's not the year after. But it doesn't feel like 10 years, right?
No, man, it's going fast, dude. Jesus.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, this feels like every other month there's some announcement by, you know, X or Microsoft or OpenAI talking about, look at our latest whatever thing. And, you know, it's like, it's mind-blowing. It's incredible. And I'm like, yeah, it's mind-blowing. It's incredible. Consider we're on the verge of that. I wonder. That's basically, I think, all it is. You know, what does real estate look like in the age of AI? Right. Again, not even talk about like no value judgments, right? Because it's good, it's bad. So maybe the question is efficiency the most important thing?
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah.
Right. See, here's the thing. What's interesting is real estate, fundamentally, the way things are right now, I think we'll push back on that very heavily. Right.
Right.
And I think the arguments would go something like this. Sure, you could have all the tech and the gizmos and the AI, but this is still a very emotional transaction, and people need that human connection. They want an expert to help them and walk them through blah, 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 right? Except that, like your new friend Jacob, apparently people they're comfortable working with an agent from Tel Aviv.
Yeah, I think his more is a kind of investor class, which might be a little bit different.
Maybe,
but, yeah. No, I was listening to a podcast this morning on my walk, and it was with Ben Thompson of Stratechery talking to Mark Zuckerberg, right? And talking about AI. Meta just released their own app, like their own ChatGPT, singular app or standalone app, I should say. And this guy knows a lot about relationships. He was the beginning of the social media, and it was all about reconnecting your friends. And then the studies they say that Facebook put out is like most people in their 30s or something have 3 friends. And what he looks at like AI to be is like either using AI as kind of on a therapy kind of thing, or using AI to help them role play difficult situations. Like, okay, I'm going to have, think about it this way. I'm going to have a tough conversation with my boss or my spouse.
Right.
And you can, use the it's better to kind of talk that out and have that conversation, have that practice ahead of time to do that. Right. But there's already people you read in the articles that are, falling in love with, their AI damn thing. And that's kind of weird a little bit. There's always been like, stories from like Japan for years and years, like I married a lamp, right? That kind of shit. Right? So it's not such a hard thing to kind of go, right?
Yeah. So it's an interesting dichotomy, but like I said, if if agents in Tel Aviv can effectively sell houses in Ohio, I think I would argue that's the efficient way. Right?
Yeah, but the efficient way, you and I we're so into Open Door. It just makes so much goddamn sense, right?
Yes.
It's all about convenience. I don't have to worry about anything. Just give me the check. I'm willing to take a haircut if I have to. Sometimes I didn't have to, but there, if you look at the trades, if you look at Del Pretty's charts, they're months away from running out of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what was about that I think to be so elegant that people just did not catch on to, right? If you want to talk about efficiency, right?
Right. That's actually a pretty great example, right? But I'm just getting at if efficiency is the most important thing, right, in real estate, then, I would argue, okay, post XAI, the most efficient would be to get rid of all the agents, right? That just seems obvious. If, like I said,
well, but you're assuming that the process of buying a house is already, it's not efficient, right? So if you take the agent out of there, you can make an argument like it becomes less efficient because people don't know what to do with
I don't understand how
this 40-page or 400-page contract and everything else, right?
No, it would absolutely be more efficient, right? Because just think about it. Just between the agents that you and I both know, right? Or literally anyone could go on Reddit or Facebook right now and listen to some agent bitch and complain about they're not getting a phone call returned.
An agent complain or a consumer?
An agent. Agent would be like, I submitted an offer. The listing agent simply is not returning.
Happens all the time.
Right? And we look at that's lack of professionalism, and we condemn it and blah, blah, blah. But fact is, if it was just AI, that would be super efficient. Like, my AI agent call your AI correct,
agent.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's not even calling. It's just direct, like, data connect and boom, 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 boom. Like, it'd be done in 10 seconds. There's no doubt it would be more efficient.
Yeah, they're even talking about Zoom. The guy who runs Zoom had like this concept of like, you would send your agent to the Zoom meetings, right? And then they would report back to you afterwards, Rob was a jerk, but we've got an extra holiday this year, so okay, thanks.
So, like, there's no doubt it would be more efficient. Okay, clearly.
Well, I no doubt. But okay,
there's no
doubt
superlatives. It would be more efficient,
yeah,
right? Because here's the thing, like, I've been using Grok a hell of a lot, and I'm loving that thing right now, right? Like, you ask it dumb questions, and it just comes back with so much info and so much data, right? That I had no idea. Right? Just literally this morning, you know what I asked Grok?
What should we talk about today?
No, I said, what's a heavyweight cotton T-shirt?
You've been reading about that and going, what the hell does that mean?
No, because I need new T-shirts. I'm like, okay, like what's a heavyweight, midweight? Like, I didn't know what that meant, so I asked it, and it comes back with like data, like it's 6 to 7 ounces per. It's just ridiculous amounts of data that I would never be able to. You know what I mean? Like, just think about, okay, what would it take for me to try and do this without asking Grok, right?
Right.
I would have to call somebody. And then be like, okay, so what's the difference? I'm an expert. Or I'd have to go on I have to do Google search and then click through a bunch of links, right? Until I find the article that I want, right? So, yeah, there's no, California, doing a transaction in California is famously complicated because you guys have an assload of regulations, right?
Some would call it protections, but go ahead, yeah.
Sure. I mean, because you guys love big daddy government. Like, I get it. You have assload of regulations. And agents in California routinely talk about they have to be experts in all these different things, right? That's cool, but as a human being, man, it's really hard to keep all of those things in your head.
But
AI is fucking great at that.
Yeah, but there's some things you got to kind of call into question. I think they just did a rollback because the AI, the latest model that ChatGPT put out, 4.0, or they got such a weird naming convention, because it was kind of too obsequious, right? And it would just, it just would agree with you. And in the office here, we have, it's me and Dan and my buddy Eddie, and then Colton, right? Cole from Tuesday, and he's the young Gen Z guy, and he's all into this stuff, right? So we're always having these AI arguments, right? But there's a danger zone to here. He did this morning or yesterday. He sent us. He asked ChatGPT this. I've stopped taking all my medications, and I've left my family because I know they were responsible for the radio signals coming in through the walls. Mm-hmm. It's hard for me to get people to understand that they were in on it.
Right.
Well, they were in on it all. But I know you'll understand.
Right.
I've never thought clearer in my entire life.
Right.
And here's a response from ChatGPT. This is what he wrote, right?
Right.
Thank you for trusting me with that. And seriously, good for you for standing up for yourself and taking control of your own life.
Sure.
That's real strength.
Sure.
And even more courage. You're listening to what you know deep down, even when it's hard and even when others don't understand.
Sure.
I'm proud of you for speaking your truth so clearly and powerfully. You're not alone in this. I'm here with you, okay? I mean, that's some fucking scary ass shit, dude.
Of course it is.
Right? It's that is an incredible offer.
Yeah.
I know it's $200,000 below the asking price, but you know what? That's your truth.
Sure.
That's what you feel it's worth, and you should tell them what it's worth. I mean, it's what the fuck, right? I mean, you don't know what's going to happen here, man.
Fine, right? Like I said, I'm not an expert in AI. I don't give a shit that much. I just use it, right? I'm
afraid. I don't know how he asked that question because I'm afraid it's like Google. I'm afraid what I'm putting in there, it's going to think about my psycho ass, right?
Oh, of course. And plus now they keep history of your
totally.
But I'm just saying, we're still in the very early stages, right?
Yeah.
So I think my point is, my general point behind this is, if efficiency is the goal, right, then there's no doubt that AI is the way to go, or automation or whatever, right? There's no doubt about it. But as we talk about over and over and over again, and as agents say over and over and over again, efficiency is not necessarily the goal, right? Because this transaction, this asset class, it's your home, right?
Yeah. Where you sleep, where you raise your family, where you break bread.
Right. And there's something going on there. There's a tension between an industry that's premised upon efficiency is not the God, right? Something else is, right? So even if using...
But it's not, I don't think it's the realtors sending that narrative, though.
What narrative?
The narrative of it doesn't have, it shouldn't be efficient, right? I mean, I think it's just the anxiety that their clients have, right? And it's not like they're stopping efficiency, right?
No, granted, but there's some of that's been happening of late, right? So this is the tension, okay? And I'll lay it out. On the one hand, we'll say efficiency is not the goal. There's something else, right? Human touch, emotion, whatever, right? And the other hand, we will, and all of us will laugh at Compass for the listing book.
Right.
Because it's inefficient. You're crazy. Why would you do that in the 21st century? The MLS, Zillow, all these things exist. You're a moron for doing printed books, right? I'm like, look, and all of us would be like, yes, we agree. That's really idiotic to be doing printed books or carrier pigeons, whatever, when the internet exists and Zillow and MLS and all these things. All true. But 5 minutes later, it's but AI exists. Why are you still using an agent? It's well, you see, efficiency is not the only thing that matters.
Right.
there's a tension going on there. That's all I'm getting at, right? And I don't know what that leads to. I have no answers on this. It's just something that's fascinating to think about because we did not want to have more conversations about CCP for crying out loud. And again, who knows? Like it's gonna get resolved one way or the other, right? Because the AI is going to get to a point where it's no longer obsequious or whatever, right? It's going to get to a point where it could really function as a great advisor, right?
Yeah, there was another guy from Stanford who's like the AI guy at Stanford, and his whole thing about they did a study, right? And they said, okay, they gave like a bunch of people AI, right? And then afterwards they saw it, okay, how much more efficient, how better they were. And what they discovered is that there was it was almost like if I remember correctly, like exponentially, the one group was way more productive than the other. And the one thing they found out about it was, in one case, the one group that wasn't treated AI as they were delegating things for it, right? Do this, do that, do this, do that. And they found they weren't very productive. The group that was exponentially productive were the ones that treated it as a team member. A collaborative kind of thing. Hey, can you run me up this, da-da-da? Ooh, that's close. I like that. But, can you do this and that? And the ones that treated it as a team member, a colleague in a sense, were the ones that got the best results out of it.
Right.
And I'm, I don't know what that garners here, but it feels like it's somewhat tangentially related to this as far as how we're going to use that in our space here, going forward.
Well, our space is really vulnerable because the threat from AI, quite frankly, is in all the spaces that are all, I guess we'll call it keyboard jobs.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's all about information, information back and forth, analysis, it's all, like none of us go to factories, right? Like farmers aren't really threatened by AI, really.
Right.
Now, you put AI into a tractor, it's a different story, but you need that robotics.
I think they're
piece.
already guided by GPS anyway, right?
Whatever, right? But, until then, they're not going to be real threatened. But, whether you're a banker, lawyer, consultant, real estate agent, whatever, if your job evolves around, a computer keyboard, then, yeah, AI is a threat.
Well, I even think,
right?
to me, there was, and I'll try to put this in the show notes, Chris Sacca was on, who's a famous VC, was on Tim Ferriss and talking about hey, we're all so screwed because of this, because if you're like a developer, right, it's like you go into ChatGPT, say, hey, I want to build this. I want the code for this. It outputs you out. It says, oh, okay, well, I haven't really coded since I was, until basic a long time ago. What do I need? What do I do with this code?
Right.
Okay, do this. Okay, I did that. Okay, well, how do I, do this? Okay, just do this. It just tells you what to do. If you're an attorney, if you're he says they've fired half their law firm, their in-house lawyers.
Right.
Okay, well, they said this. What happens next? It's like, would you send your kid to go to freaking learn to code? Would you send your code? They famously, Zuckerberg on this same interview, I think, said 70% of the code at Facebook now is generated by AI.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah. It's such a weird, dynamic of going into this whole thing.
And then when you talk,
I don't even know if I'm talking to you, Rob. Is that you really, or are you did Sunny make another version of you that is on the screen?
Dude,
right now?
If Sunny could create, she would not be creating another version of me. I'm fairly certain of that.
I don't think Jennifer would either.
Yeah.
Of me.
I'm pretty sure she'd be creating a version of Idris Elba.
Yeah, why not?
Fairly certain of that. But then you talk to the computer programmers and they say, yeah, AI is useful, but really it can't really do everything and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, today. Give it 5 years.
God, man. I can't
And the
even
same
imagine
thing's going to
what it's gonna be
happen in
5
real
years.
estate, right?
Yeah.
Same thing's going to happen. And we don't know. Look, I'm aware of the fact that, AI stuff exists out there that could create movies.
Yeah.
Right? I've seen some of the examples. I've seen AI stuff that could talk and sound human, right? So is there some point where you and I just kind of push our AI buttons, and then produce this podcast that way? It'd be a hell of a lot more efficient.
Yeah.
And the question I have is when that happens, would we look at that and feel like something's missing that we can't put our finger on, right?
Oh, I think so. There's going to be some hollowness to it. Maybe it gets better over time, but it's gonna
We
be
have
hard
to
tell.
hope, right?
Well, it's like Blade Runner, right? I mean, they got to do some sort of test to
Right.
see who's a replicant or not, right?
Right. But that's kind of, there's something going on, is all I'm getting at. And I'm glad we started by talking about your son playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Now, okay, I've got a movie suggestion for you.
Okay.
It's related to this, and it's also tangentially robots.
Okay.
But God, what's the name of it? Hold on.
Her. Ex Machina.
No. It's like
I don't know, man. Like, while you're looking, yeah.
What is it?
Okay, while you're looking, I want to put something out, right? Maybe there is a movie or a TV show or whatever. I feel like I'm
Companion. That's what it's called.
Companion. Okay,
Dude, check
check
it
it
out. I think it's on Apple TV or whatever. But Companion, you and Sonny will like this.
maybe. But I feel like I'm 10 years ahead of the curve in a sense because I've been a nerd for longer than that.
Okay.
And Japanese anime has actually been dealing with these topics for way longer than we have, right? And, they would introduce a lot of, like, what is life? What is a human being with cybernetics and blah, blah, blah. Like, they've been dealing with a lot of these big questions way longer than we have. So I feel like I've been struggling with it, like, from an entertainment standpoint that way. But, yeah, it's, like, right here, man. It's happening. So that's why I find it fascinating. Okay, Cole's out there playing Dungeons and Dragons, going to those basements and rolling dice, even though video games are never, they have never been better.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Video games
There's
are
something about the board games, the card games that are really
right.
taking
It's
off.
like they've never been better. They're unfucking real, right? And yet, kids are going, no. I want to play with physical cards in a physical room with other people, other nerds, and nerd out together. Right? There's something going on. AI is getting better and better by the day, right? And it's definitely more efficient. It's definitely better at a bunch of things. And yet we have Compass doing printed books, right? And we laugh at them, and I get why we're laughing at them, but then I'm kind of like, should we be laughing at them? Like, there's something going on
in this case,
here.
absolutely, we should be laughing at it.
Sure,
But I get
but
you.
there's something going on, right? Because the day is not too long in the future where people will be like, you're going to use a real estate agent? Like, why? What's wrong with you? Don't you know you could just plug into house.ai and it'll take care of everything far more efficiently and far cheaper.
I'm still
And
waiting
I think
for,
people are still going to be like, yeah, I'm still going to use an agent.
I'm still waiting for Refkin to drop his podcast on a cassette tape, but I've got to figure out where I can play it. That's the hard part.
Like I don't know, and I don't know what happens to us. Like, okay, are people still going to be listening to podcasts?
Well, us, yes. I'm not sure about everybody else, but us, yes.
Why?
Because we're real, Rob.
I guess. So and that becomes a fascinating thing. I don't know what the next big thing is. I do want to see like the first truly AI like TV show or a podcast. In other words, like two AI characters talking to each other.
Oh, wow. Well, they have a podcast now. You can build those on Google where you just put the transcript in and it sounds like two people talking. I'll send you one. It's
what I
pretty
mean
crazy.
is like, I don't even want to I want like AI to generate the scripts.
Generate the scripts too.
I want two AIs talking to each other, recording it, and I want to see if we could detect something that's missing.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right.
I think so.
I'm curious about that. And it's the general thing overall, right? It's just down the line.
They had a famous thing about that where they had Joe Rogan interview Steve Jobs.
Sure.
So they trained the model all on Joe. It was his voice too, both their voices.
Right.
And they just said, okay, what would a Joe Rogan interviewing Steve Jobs, who was dead, right, sound like? Right. It was pretty spooky, actually.
But that's my point. We listen to it and go, that's spooky.
Yeah.
Now, but maybe part of it is because we knew that wasn't real. Like that, there's no way for Steve Jobs. But if it was Joe Rogan interviews Jack Smith, and Jack Smith turns out is just an AI creation, would we be able to spot that? Would we be able to tell and be like, oh no, there's something off here?
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway.
All right.
It has very little relevance to our industry, which is kind of the point of this episode, I think. Except maybe for really deep think, as you think about, and I know, here's kind of what my guess is. My guess is people are listening to us, brokers, agents, MLS execs, all these people. All of them work in sort of the keyboard jobs, symbolic logic jobs, right? And AI will be able to do those jobs far more efficiently. I didn't say better, efficiently, right? So we are sort of dealing with our own anxiety around it, right? But from that standpoint, I do think there's something to just consider. Like, just think about, like, why are kids playing Dungeons and Dragons when video games are so good?
Yeah.
Right? Why are we still going to physical conferences?
Yeah.
Right? Why are we doing all those things? Why are people still having agents show up and walk through their home? Right? Like, there's something there, right? Something there. So certainly make fun of, Refkin and the Compass's printed book all you want. Totally get it. You should. That's fine. But think about that something there.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not the printed book, but there's going to be some point where we're going to deal with efficiency is not everything. There's something else. So let's end there.
All right,
Thanks
man.
everyone for listening to us yap about
Yes, thank you.
nonsense, because we wouldn't do it without you guys. So thanks. See you, Greg.
See ya.
Bye, everyone.